Roanoke Gaming has a new video. New slasher morphology. If you're into Dead Space, we have some. I'm just going to preemptively like it. Absolutely love his content. Absolutely love his morphology content. 100% into Roanoke Gaming and what they've done. But that being said, new Dead Space, new slasher lore, morphology. I'm into. If you haven't, let's hope you find someone that you like. Yeah, have a good one.
The alterations to the body that it causes therein is an absolute process. As a person exists longer in the presence of the marker signal, their body will begin to twist and alter, but not before the mind finally fails. In this process, all humanity is lost, and they are driven to extreme acts of aggression when they are still in their hominid form.
I'm looking in React,
as
it's
the
not
signal
there.
begins changing how the brain functions, eventually this will lead to them to ultimately take themselves out, or in a rage, be taken out by someone else. Honestly, if you take Toxoplasmosis gondii and compare it to the marker, it's almost a little bit similar, isn't it? For those that aren't aware, Toxoplasmosis gondii causes rodents to become attracted to the scent of cat urine.
It's wild.
And as a result, this will actually result in them being eaten, to which the parasite can then transfer to the cat to continue its life cycle. It also causes behavioral changes and causes them to not stick to the corners of rooms and under brush or logs, and instead wander out into the open to be scooped up by like an owl or other bird of prey. The point to this is the behavior of the animal changes as the mind is altered, and this is only to the benefit of what infected the creature initially. Actually, interestingly enough, the same parasite, which if you've watched this channel before, you probably already know this, makes humans attracted to the smell of cat urine as well, which is why people who actually hoard cats typically are infected with this parasite.
Typically not
in terms
mutually
of the marker,
exclusive.
the same
Correlation is not causation.
Causes the person to like take themselves out, or in other ways go after others to be taken out, requires fundamental changes in the brain.
Yeah.
These changes could be as simple as decreased activity in some areas and increased activities in others. But the human mind can actually be stubbornly resilient as well, it seems. With some, the marker process takes only like a couple of hours, but for others, it seems as though not only are they resistant to the marker's effects, but they can outright be immune to it, which in turn can create an area of effect that the marker signal is not able to penetrate, making those that are being affected by the signal
yes, making sure that we're citing science correctly
by being close enough to that
What is
person.
happening?
This was actually seen in Lexine Weller in Dead Space Extraction.
Oh, this is
during
Extraction.
The initial outbreak on the mining
I
colony
missed this game.
Aegis 7. With that said, you can be resistant to the marker all you'd like, but even this abnormality appears to have been planned by the creatures that control the marker.
I missed this game.
If
I
a
want
species
to
you are
remaster.
trying to assimilate has immune individuals, then that could spell disaster, as it would give too many a chance to destroy the marker, and thus run the chances of absorbing the species in a convergence event. If the species was left in its original form, then it may not be like formidable enough to take on this other species' law enforcement or military strength, which even further hurts the chances of them being overrun. So again, they would have to be changed in some sort of way beyond just driven to become the biomass observed like all over the walls as the corruption. They would
I do like the corruption in the remake.
Be drones stalking and looking for not only survivors.
Okay, I am gonna make an executive decision. I gotta close off getting more reacts in my list tonight, because I still have about 2 hours of reacts in my backlog right now, so I can't take any more requests tonight. I'm working as best as I can to get through the React channel and through what I need to. I do apologize. I'm working my best at trying to get through it.
But also those that might be resistant to the marker's effects, if not
This is a New Game Plus Necromorph.
As a person slowly begins to hallucinate in the presence of the marker, this would present a horrifying existence in reality to that individual. It depends on what you personally believe concerning if we're the sum of our parts or something more, but one thing is certain. Our brain entering a period of dysfunction can inspire a cascade of stress responses that ironically help the marker further its goal towards you changing. Those first hallucinations, the whispering in the shadow, the person walking by in the corner of your eye, eventually all those come front and center.
Right.
Many people who recorded their experiences would say that when they were near the marker or working on it, noted that it started simply enough. But eventually it would go on to become very blatant that the person was basically hallucinating. They began seeing loved ones who had already passed for any reason on cameras or down at the end of hallways. Eventually these hallucinations...
This is by Roanoke Gaming.
...and would tell them to do terrible things. In fact, we know on Titan Station that even the younglings would be affected to the point that they would become aggressive during recess, as their invisible friend would tell them to do things.
Yeah.
For adults, if enough time passed, this could result in a horrific change in perception. Back on Aegis 7, a man by the name of Sam Caldwell was working as a miner when he began to get attacked, and I use that term loosely. It may have been possible that someone else was succumbing to the signal and
Game
he was
Among Us
further
Lol. I have
along than
not.
Sam was, but then he had to fight his way out of the mines. It became apparent, though, that once law
Kinda.
enforcement showed up, he was actually the one that was losing it. The innocents in front of him were just
It's
regular
the same
people,
era.
either trying to stop him or get out of his way, but the marker signal sent him into a deep state of psychosis to the point that he saw Necros attacking him. Eventually, he was put down, approaching the elevator because he was the one who was stacking bodies for the marker. The hallucination's end goal is to get you to create biomass.
Yeah.
It does this by affecting your perception, which leads to an increase in cortisol and the disruption of neurochemicals in your brain, typically
Start with
released
the brain, not
in
the
rhythm
feet. No,
with
you're right.
daily activity. Once
Always
this is
the feet.
accomplished, cortisol will continue to rise in your body as well as adrenaline as the brain struggles to make sense of the world around
I've loved
and the
following
rushes it
him.
perceives.
Dude is a
This
legend.
also begins to affect your ability to sleep, with even medicine not being able to put you down because your body is just so amped up, and this can further decrease your resilience. Once this stage has been reached, the person is incredibly difficult to control because they are in a state of constant fight or flight. If they choose fight, then you get the Sam situation. If you choose run, then you're more likely to end up falling in the hands of another person who's also losing it.
Yeah.
The third option, after enough time has passed and the voices have become too loud, is self-elimination.
The
to
marker
escape the
is
situation
awful in
they
terms
are
of
in.
how it assaults your
Intelligence
mind.
is said to affect the process, which is actually fairly interesting. Again, we know with Isaac that he is
Moose
resistant
helmet.
to a degree, but not immune. I've stated in other videos, though, that I thought Ellie was outright immune, much like Lexine, but unlike Lexine, she does not have the area of influence, and as a result, Strauss would succumb to the marker influence despite being near her most of the time on time and station. But there is an actual structural reason for resilience. I believe I covered this slightly.
It's a shame that we don't see that other lady. It's because she was in the Dead Space 2 DLC. She was in Dead Space Extraction. She has a very heavy story significance in being immune to the marker and its influence, and even had a kid in 2, and that was a whole plot point. But she wasn't even there in 3, which is just like, we need a 3 remake. 2 is fine. Maybe just do a graphical overhaul of 2 if you want. Easy sell. But 3 needs a drastic overhaul to get some of these plot points.
My last Dead Space video, but that got age restricted, of course. Even though after it was
Full
confirmed
remake,
suitable,
yes.
It's very odd. So I don't think
Or
many
same
of
way
you
as the red
actually
marker.
saw
I think-
that I released that video.
I think the
Let's
black
go into
marker
it
was
for
a little
moment.
less
Don't worry,
powerful.
we are
I
getting
think.
the
I'd have to
slasher
remember
spear
it.
in a second. I'm just kind of setting the stage. But before we get too deep into that, I want to say thank you for all the support that I've gotten over on the Roanoke Tales channel, talking about real life horror. I should have another.
Oh, I
video
didn't even know
out
you had a
this
Roanoke
week.
Tales
Also,
channel. Hell yeah.
A lot of people requested that they wanted this in podcast format, since it was more talking about just actual events of like horrific portions of history.
Yeah.
So I did get those uploaded.
That's pretty
it should
neat.
be on like, I mean, everybody says this, but like all major podcast things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, it's called Real Horror with Roanoke is the name if anybody's interested. But we're gonna move on.
I love it. I'll have
People
to watch
with higher
this.
levels of cognitive ability tend to be able to cope better with a wide range of challenges in their jobs and in their life in general. Isaac is said to be an engineer who thinks on the fly and can produce solutions with very little information. I mean, that sort of explains like how he's running around the ship fixing everything.
Just
that was
fixing
broken,
everything.
despite
Fixing
all the other
Tavalantin
engineers
tech.
failing. This type of mental processing and ability would denote an active frontal lobe. It should also be noted that there is a cerebello-parietal component related to intelligence as well. So basically the frontal lobe and parietal lobes, that's where your ability to like learn, understand, and use that information effectively is located. Knowing this, having a resilient brain is actually due to a legitimate structure in the brain. In the prefrontal cortex, this area is known to help you process difficult things around you.
I can
and as
fix
a
the
result,
clock,
your
yes.
behaviors will match
Person
the
found on
outcome
Earth.
of that.
Yeah, I'm
Those
trying to
that
figure
have
out.
less
I don't remember
activity
the
in this area,
power of the black
or
versus
have
the
it
red
altered
though.
through potentially like a traumatic brain injury, will lose this ability to control their emotions as effectively. And we have seen this in a
PTSD
man
can
named
also
Phineas
cause
Gage.
brain
Phineas Gage
shenanigans
lived
to
between
happen.
July 1823 and then met his end in May of 1860. He was an American railroad construction foreman at the time, and due to some faulty TNT that he was packing, an iron rod was blasted up through his jaw and out the top of his head. Everybody thought like this dude was completely done the second it happened, but he ended up surviving. Prior to this incident, he is said to have been very level-headed and a good leader. He would break up disagreements between workers and was able to mediate quite well. However, when the rod went through his head, it severed the connection of his brain and most of his frontal lobe. As he recovered, it became clear that he was a different person entirely. his emotional regulation was completely gone.
Yeah.
At a whim, he would oscillate between happy to sad to angry, then back to happy once again.
Fear the man had a
All within,
rod
the
go
same
through his
minute.
brain.
Any news about anything could set him off in an instant.
Yeah.
At the time, very little was known about the brain, but we now know that the portion of his brain
right.
responsible for emotional regulation as well as mental resilience was cut off from the rest of the brain, rendering him this way. So here we have an example of what happens when the brain is cut off from the prefrontal cortex. Emotional dysregularity to an extreme degree. I believe when the marker attacks the mind, this area of the brain is also subdued, but not completely or all at once. To shut down an area of the brain would likely mean that the signal is also shutting down the whole brain.
Yeah,
which
but
at
it's
that
not wanting
point,
to do
yes,
that.
I mean, they become corruption, which honestly may be the better process if you don't really think about it. But for anyone immune, they could then go and destroy the markers, which in turn would ruin the plan and basically cause the corruption that formed to just fall into a soupy DNA everywhere, as mentioned in the Ishimura before on Titan Station when they found it. Or anybody who was just kind of like comatose would wake back up at the conclusion of this. So I believe the markers take the approach of decreased activity, but do not stop the activity entirely.
It's suppressing,
Because
so
of
to
this,
speak.
those that have a higher functioning prefrontal cortex indicated by their intelligence are able to regulate this marker signal better. And while they may become altered in some ways, such as hallucinating people, hearing whispers, or in general seeing marker code in their vision, they do not completely.
I don't think they
have their
mentioned
ability
it,
to
no, but it
regulate
was
their
in the
emotions
lore.
behind it taken away or lose their grasp.
No, I did not.
of
I
reality.
own them. I've needed
This is
to.
seen
They're just a
when
little too
Isaac
gory for my
struggles with
taste.
issues the longer he's on the Ishimura, but never fully falls to the marker despite him being manipulated by it. This is also seen with the more intelligent crew members who are left over, such as Dr. Kine, whose regulation of emotions is actually seen when they first find the marker, and he's like not ecstatic about it, but the captain and Dr. Mercer
Fucking Mercer.
I mean, even to a degree, Mercer himself, while he was manipulated like everyone else, he did not off himself. So that kind of indicates that he was resistant as well.
Yeah,
Although
Mercer just
he was
it,
doing
it,
some, like,
it fit
horrendous stuff,
unitology,
as
his
well as
unitology
concerning
agenda.
Brent Harris and turning him into the hunter, which we will definitely be going over in a video in the future.
Yes!
But what happens when a person...
Man, Brent Harris, we got some like spicy hunter lore in the remake. It's been actually really neat to kind of see how that's gone and how Nicole actually played a part in Hunter's creation as well. It's wild. No, I have not seen Wendigoon. I'd have to watch it.
Does not have the increased
Original
ability
Death.
to regulate
Yes.
emotions.
I thought it
What
was
if their
better.
brain is running on normal mode? Because remember, most of us fall into a range of averages concerning our intelligence, our skeletons, our muscle mass, our fat content, and our emotions. Because over time, these were the most effective that led to our survival. So this is just simply natural selection.
Right.
However, because the black marker
There it is.
influencing all of humanity's evolution in the Dead Space universe, all of this was controlled by the black marker from the time that mammals were scurrying back into their dens and underfoot of the dinosaurs when the asteroid
12,
hit
yeah.
the Yucatan Peninsula. Because of this, things were built into the human evolutionary process that could be switched on or off when the marker would cause the planet to be harvested and the apex species assimilated. So, side note, I would also say it was known by the marker that there would still be outliers during this time period because of what we're about to talk about. Those that have regular minds have them downgraded to the point that they lose the ability to regulate. And once this happens, their assimilation into the biomass is all but assured, should others not succeed in preventing it. But it really doesn't matter to that individual at that point because they've already gotten like consumed by everything around us, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But this results
Yeah,
in
go for it.
something known as the slasher. As the outbreak continues and the bodies get stacked at the hands of those that are either hallucinating or acting aggressively, not on purpose, but because they are pushed to, or even the people that are resistant that are trying to like keep others away from them, something begins to happen. See, the marker does not appear to be able to completely change living tissue into one at once. Instead, it requires the brain to be shut down entirely or infected entirely.
Right.
Think of it
Makes
like
sense.
two things vying for
Panera of
control
the bread.
body. The
Legendary
brain
name.
being
Thank you for the
naturally
follow.
occurring would like to keep the current set of circumstances. The marker needs the brain out of the way in order to fully control the body and alter it.
Right.
This sort of brings up the idea that the brain itself somehow has the ability to either weaken or denigrate the effects of the marker naturally.
Return to
as
marker.
through
No,
the
do not
evolutionary
return to
process,
marker.
It was not able to completely change the brain entirely. And this was kind of a basis I had that a naturally occurring species kind of lives harmoniously with the actual planet that it lives on, but then the marker species obviously is driven to consume more and more, so it needs to leave its planet and spread out. But because it comes from that natural
Origin, thank you for the follow.
animal that was already
Make
there.
us whole. No!
It does
Do not make
have
us whole.
still somewhat of those roots that possibly make it more resistant. But the existence of the brain in the first place, this sort of makes the marker.
I mean,
need to work
humanity
and
does
push
have higher
humanity to
cognitive
spread.
function in
So
terms of
there
evolution.
is
So I
some
mean,
resistance,
it makes
I
sense that the
believe,
marker
to
would
the
shoot.
marker.
The
This is
reason
very-
that the marker ended up in the first place, right? The reason that it wiped out the dinosaurs, so to speak, was because the dinosaurs could not be assimilated into a brother and moon. It didn't have they didn't have the ability as lizards, right? They didn't have the ability to ascend, quote unquote. So thus, black marker smacks down Yucatan Peninsula, the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, right? That thing. And then humanity is what they've championed up effectively. Random verse lyrics, real quick. Sure, go for it. Make us whole. I am the bread. You are the bread. You legend.
So we're getting like way sidetracked. I could go on about that for hours.
No,
because
there's-
that's like
there's a
philosophical, but
Huge
to me,
conversation
it's
to be
more
had here.
unlikely. So once the brain is overcome, the body will begin to alter into the first form, again known as the slasher. And from here,
They're
the
quite
marker
long,
will
yeah.
permeate into
Legend.
the tissue more deeply as
I
it
like the
alters
lyrics.
its communication and subsequently the structures that make up the body to create the monsters that have way more offensive capabilities than the average person would have. The slasher itself is formed from just one person who has met their end. Because they are first to get up and form, they then create more of them. They
Yeah.
are then more standard during the beginning of the outbreak. As the process continues, though, other variants and other forms of necromorphs will come into play, with even the slasher eventually being hardened into a stronger form known as the enhanced necromorph or enhanced slasher.
I've never
So
seen
before
this enhanced
getting
slasher.
into what the
That's
internal
wild.
changes to the body are, we first have to take a look at their physical morphology.
Oh, where's the
which-
feet?
Oh man, talk about getting to like the absolute basics of this channel, where it all started from, and why this channel gets dunked on as like a foot thing.
Where is he?
masquerading as
Where
a
is it?
Video game science channel. You just gotta lean into the memes sometimes. Starting with the feet, we
There we go. Oh, he said it. He said the meme. We're starting with the feet. It is a Roanoke Gaming video.
see a few things have changed from the original to the remake. In fact,
my God,
quite a
yes.
few things are different. But what makes it awesome
That's interesting,
is because
actually.
there's actually a lot more stuff to analyze.
Yeah.
The feet have been lengthened quite a bit to roughly about 1.5 times their original size of the original foot.
It looks like
And this is because
they're
of the new sprouting toes that have come off. from the front of the
digitigrade.
foot. The toes sit at the front, and with the third one on the back holding them up, it's much like a heel that's attached to the heel, making the foot now more digitigrade in structuring rather
End
than
up on
plantigrade
Wiki
that
Feet, never
humans
know.
usually have. But what's more interesting is the toes sprouting, well, okay, I guess you can call them toes, but really they just appear to be protrusions more than anything. These protrusions will continue on up the leg to just around above the new ankle area. And this seems
Strengthening
that
the ankle.
this is here to like stabilize or
Yeah.
attempt to stabilize anyways, which generally makes sense as the genetic
Makes their
coding that
gait
is
make
formed
sense.
during your gestational period would have basically had the information of sprouting toes, which is similar to fingers, and that's all.
I've liked it.
in this area.
I think
Moving
playing
on to the legs,
2008
we see
and the
creatures
remake
have
do
a bit
different
of an
things,
ungainly
and
gait.
playing both is the
Due to
full
structural
experience.
changes of the legs, this has caused them to move more carefully, which is a drawback, but that doesn't matter because they're still capable.
But they're
of
more
occasionally
stable,
running at a high rate
arguably.
of speed, using the arms as a counterbalance with every step in order to stay upright.
Yeah.
The legs have not increased in size as much, but as we move to the thigh and pelvic region,
I
we
normally
begin to
can't
see something
either.
interesting.
Can't do something like Outlast.
The angle
Couldn't
at
do
which
it.
the femur attaches to the pelvis has dramatically changed. And this
Yeah.
would also change drastically how the slasher walks by association.
Yeah.
Bone shape entirely, as well as the socket connections, have been altered, which I think it's because, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but I've noticed that the slashers, because of their hunched over appearance, because of how the arms are changed,
Their center
because
gravity
of
is
how the
definitely
legs
weird.
are changed, it kind of seems like there's like a template for a quadrupedal animal being applied to the human form.
Kind
which
of,
makes
yeah.
them appear this way. Anyways, getting back to the pelvis, it has increased in size to about 1.5 times
Right, it's
its
a
original
thriller
size,
more than a
which
horror.
is fairly interesting. A larger pelvis does not seem all that necessary, so this would denote things like the bone itself being increased in size and the density as a result of the transformation process. This can also be seen when we move around
Give
to
it some
the back
time.
of the creature.
It might go on
would
sale.
seem to me that the signal intrinsically knows where the weak points of the human body are, at least to some degree, as the vertebral column has been bolstered with extra bone.
Yeah,
The point
it's-
that it now has to come out of the skin and has formed a
This
visible protrusion.
exospine
They are
is
much
wild.
larger than a normal human vertebrae. Moving back to the abdomen, well, this is going to definitely get me screwed, but it's basically just guts.
Yeah.
Now, typically, I would think these were vestigial because originally
Yeah,
there was
they don't
really
need
nothing
'em.
about them in the original game to make you think any different. So they just really have no purpose. But I don't believe that this is totally the case anymore.
Define.
In some of the infected slashers we see, much like with the exploders, their guts actually have a certain level of bioluminescence to them, and this indicates that the viral bacteria that arrives
Random
with the
Canadian
marker
too, thank you for the follow.
infection is also present here. Why is it a viral bacteria? I actually have an episode on that. If you'd like to see it, just type in Dead Space viral bacteria.
I'll
on
have
this
to
channel.
react to that again.
I know
Or
viruses
react to that.
and
I don't
bacteria
remember seeing
are
that.
different organisms. I'm actually a microbiologist. I had somebody get really
Right?
bent out of shape that I chose like that adjective to describe the bacteria what I was doing at the time. It was just very odd. Like he wrote me like a dissertation. But anyways, it seems the intestines will now be a breeding ground for this specific bacteria, which calls into question if the viral bacteria is actually the leftover gut microbiome of the person and is also influenced by the marker.
Yeah, I could see it.
I mean, it really wouldn't be that far-fetched to think about it that way because we know there isn't like a specific species barrier in which the marker signal can affect. I mean, it took over the Talvalantians. They were aliens.
Yeah.
It took over the military dogs in Dead Space 3. I mean, they're mammals, but they're definitely not human. And it takes over humans, and it's very clearly taken over a ton of other species.
Yeah, it has.
Based on how many Brethren
runes are
actually
fucked.
The admin also sports everyone's favorite, tiny arms. These arms creep me out every time.
Tiny arm.
So these arms are typically used for two purposes. Should the legs be taken out from underneath the slasher, these can help keep it upright and then throw it upwards in the air.
I didn't notice that. That's kind of cool, actually.
Arms. Or if it draws you in,
so they're not vestigial.
they give you a tiny little hug. God, I don't know. It's just a creepy
Tiny hug.
Man. Anyhow, moving up to the torso, not much has changed, although I also wonder if the lungs are affected on the same level as the intestines. The
I'm
shoulder
assuming
joints have been
so.
cracked into
They have no
place and
needs of
altered,
lungs.
much like the hips are, which has
Well,
raised
so the thing that kind of fucks with me in regards to Necromorph morphology is that they scream, which means that the vocal cords weren't deemed unnecessary by the Brethren Moon, changing them into slashers. So it's not out of the question that the lungs still have some capacity to be working, which is wild to me.
Raise the arms almost
because Eric threw the
perpendicular
vocal cords
to the
right.
shoulder
Sound.
plane. Because of this, the elbows sit much higher than the head. But this is also because the head has been pushed forward and down, likely due to the spinal growth the slasher has undergone.
It's heavy.
And this, again, gives it almost the appearance that it wants to be quadrupedal, but is walking on two legs.
And honestly,
the
it
forearms
might.
have also grown
It
to
might
about
turn
double
quadrupedal at
their
some
original
point.
length, and the hands have been elongated. Coming out of the hands, sharp blades now burst from the palms, which are used in an offensive manner. And then rounding back the last time to the quadrupedal comment, these blades can also be used to stabilize the slasher, which actually
it can also be hallucinations. I can't discount that.
At least partially quadrupedal. These blades are thick enough to smash against metal and not shatter, but have a bladed edge that can cut through most materials, such as the human body,
bone is
as well as
hard,
regular clothing, and some heavier fabrics. And judging by Isaac's suit, they are also sharp enough to gouge out the metal as they hit it. But this is also because of the strength that the slashers possess.
Yeah,
so
they're not
off,
limited by
let me talk about motive
human brains.
The guys who remade this game. If you guys see this, it's a freaking chef's kiss of a design. You guys did awesome. The other day, I had some dude basically say that I couldn't think this was a 10 out of 10 game for myself personally just because there were game elements I liked. Like, if you're watching this, bro, what are you even saying? Like,
I'm so
the
confused.
game elements are what make the game. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, the story is. I mean, I love the story anyways, but the game elements.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. Anyways, huge bra moment. So
I mean, I think it's like an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Like, I need to actually get to filming this so I can actually put up my review on it. Like, I thought it was a good game. I still think that there's some differences, key differences, narratively and contextually that I had between the original and the remake, and playing both gets you the full Dead Space 1 experience, in my opinion, personally, as someone who's done 3 annual Dead Space streams at this point. I feel I have a little bit of grounds to talk on it. I don't know, like, it's interesting. 9.5 out of 10. It's up there. It's somehow, though, because EA kept releasing patches, somehow it got less stable after release, and I haven't figured out why yet. Like, it got less stable as time went on. It's been
we get
interesting.
to see more of the Necromorphs.
Day one, it was incredibly stable.
Way that we can actually achieve by using a force blaster. And trust me, I want to say what it actually is, but I also like buying groceries.
That's
Although,
the one.
let's be honest, this video again is 9 out of 10 going to get wrecked by the age issue. So
yeah,
I don't even know what I'm talking about. Complaining aside, using the force handheld, peeling off the skin,
force
the
handheld
structures are relatively the same, which will be important in a moment. The muscle size,
his censorship is
does
amazing.
not seem to be increased all that
Sitting
much
at
either,
A1.
if at any.
10 bicycle
Blasting
tires
the
out of a
slasher again,
minivan.
We see the deeper
That's my
muscle
rating.
tissues underneath still remain firmly attached to the skeleton after the top layer has already been lost, which indicates something quite interesting to me. With the deeper muscle layers as well as tendons and ligaments, This could point to the possibility that these connections to the bone have been bolstered, which, if we know the bone itself is growing and increasing in density, that would indicate that the softer tissues may actually be further integrated into the bone structure itself, now giving it the ability to hold on with greater strength.
Okay, so the bones are reinforced. Yeah, that makes sense.
Able to survive hits that would massively damage a person, such as, I don't know, a hit from a plasma cutter. And it could also possibly explain why it's able to hit so hard but not destroy its own body. Newton's third law states that for every action or force in nature, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If object A exerts a force or anything on object B, then object B also exerts an equal and opposite force on object A.
Right.
When the slasher hits Isaac, he may get cut in half or lose a limb, but those exact forces are also operating on the limb of the slasher. Sort of like when you get into a fist fight, you can easily damage your limbs as well by landing a blow on the other person. Those forces go into that person's body, but they also go back into your body as well.
But necromorphs don't necessarily feel pain.
Dismantle a person back to their factory components means that those same forces are rattling.
Unless we're talking about the exploders, because technically they may maybe still be sentient.
Well, but it appears as though they are more securely attached, and as a result, they do not degrade or break like a human body does. The exterior appearance of a slasher indicates that the body itself had met its end and is reanimated, which we'll kind of talk about the whole reanimation thing here in a moment and how it's possible. But moving up to the head, the skin is ashen and gray, its face is gaunt and pale. The eyes have sunk into the head, and the cornea and like irises and pupils themselves in general have turned a sickly yellow color. This yellow color is also a type of bioluminescence, indicating that the brain is likely experiencing the same perfusion of infection that is present in the intestines.
Right.
This infection actually links the brain to the marker and subsequently to the species that controls the marker. See, it's hypothesized that the Brethren Moons, or the things that control them, itself as a conduit for creatures, can see everything that a necromorph sees. The only reason they don't show up and just absorb everything right then and there is because the universe is quite expansive, and they actually have no idea where you are, and they need the convergence event to start, which kind of signals them and will alert them to a species' presence, which then they can form a new link. So, how do the slashers actually get up post-mortem and walk around? Well, the interesting thing about a person meeting their end is it's not 100% their end at that moment. Usually. So, like, if you took a nuke going off, that's like 100% of you is done at that moment. But if it's like a wound or a natural cause,
you're vaporized.
Once you pass on, a lot of your body is still alive. And even past that, cells may run out of metabolic energy and shut down, but for like a short period of time, that can be returned to them. But even then, in the presence
That's why your fingernails and hair continue to grow.
None of that is necessary. As the signal
I do like the
drifts
Brethren.
through
I
the
think
ship
they're neat.
Or through the planet, or through wherever you are, the station, anyone who loses control
like
of their
that
body
plot
by one
element,
way or
I think
another
could stay
will
easy.
shift from internal metabolisms utilizing ATP or adenosine triphosphate to using the energy gained by the marker signal. It appears that through the evolutionary process of humans on Earth in the Dead Space universe, the marker made the animals of Earth capable of using the marker's energy in place of metabolism in some instances. Now, the black marker itself does not seem to offer this energy, but it does offer like a different form
pulls
of the
back
energy.
from, fair enough. Okay, thank you for clarification on
implanted
that.
In the cellular DNA of humans, the ability to use the marker signal or use its energy. So on Earth, humans are reliant on chemical energy because the marker, again, does not offer what they need, because that would just kind of screw everything up, and there would not be enough biomass to start a convergence event that soon. However, once humans build the red marker out of bismuth, it's clear something else happened.
Why bismuth?
See, the energy is there in the black marker, but it appears changed somehow, and this is likely because the black marker itself does not want to influence the species on that level. Scientists were stated as saying, it's like it wants us to build it. Well,
that'd be why. So like Google is just like, obviously this is the like the esoteric meaning of it, right? Maybe uses support for transformation, aiding travel between the physical plane and mental plane, lessening that lessening is misspelled, neat Google, between the astral and spirit. So that's obviously the metaphysical explanation of it. In terms of bismuth, less commonly in the platinum, so it is a rarer material. Lab grown in crystals, okay, that's actually kind of neat. But what is it good for? Dark silver, pink hue, often with iridescent oxide tarnish, showing many colors from yellow. I mean, I'm very curious what the design philosophy was going into making it made out of bismuth specifically.
It does, but it wanted you to build it differently than the original marker,
right?
Which as a result would put the energy out needed to corrupt and change the body and steal away the metabolic pathway for survival. a lot of people seem to think that the marker was like against the Necromorph somehow, and this was kind of like a confusing thing in the first game. But really, the marker wants Necromorphs. It just is lying to everybody around it. So the marker, they thought they were studying
the marker
it
is
and
sus.
learning about it, and like, oh, everything's good. This is how we do this. This is really easy. But really, the marker, the black marker specifically on Earth, was just kind of lying to them, saying, oh yeah, you need to build it this way, even though I'm built this way. I guess you could say the
built
black marker
different.
was literally just built different. So
Got
once
him!
a person is done so, the marker's energy will then reanimate the cell by taking over the metabolism.
No, I didn't
and
watch
also
this
influencing
beforehand.
the genetics of the person. And this will cause the body to then, again, reanimate over a period of time. Slowly
It
at
is
first, but
gaslighting,
eventually
yes.
the person will get back
Gaslighting
up.
everybody.
The other process that we have seen with Captain Matthias is way more brutal. If an infector can directly inject the viral bacteria into the brain, it will quickly cause that bacteria to spread through the rest of the body, possibly by jump-starting the heart, considering the proboscis is likely going all the way to the brainstem, shocking the heart back into action. Because, also, remember, while the captain was gone, the cells are still receiving that energy from the red marker on board.
Yeah, the radiation's
really
still in
low
effect.
levels of it, and all the cells were still likely functional to a degree and alive.
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Once the bacteria spreads, it quickly alters the body into the slasher in just a few moments as opposed to hours with just a signal alone.
Right.
Because of this, and I need to tell you this is off the lore, but having looked at the lore lately and also back in the day, a lot of what I say ends up there, at least in the wikis, which is absolutely baller.
Baller!
This also explains what was said in the remake, which is also
he's
pretty
ballin',
awesome. And
but at
audio
what
log
cost?
questions if cutting off the limbs actually ends the necros or just incapacitates them.
It incapacitates them.
Low-level energy hypothesis is to be believed, then they are just incapacitated at that moment. They can still bite your ankle if you walk by.
They're dead, quote-unquote, due to game mechanic reasons and game balancing reasons. You don't actually take out a necromorph. That's not how that works in the universe. Like, it's still receiving marker radiation. He is correct. It could still be an ankle biter. It's the one thing on Call of Duty World at War, right? You leave the one zombie and Nazi zombies. just the one, so you go and build up the windows again. You go get what ammo you need, etc. And he's just wandering around. That kind of thing. Association with the feet. That's fair. Roanoke does love the feet.
They will either regrow
allegedly,
limbs, or if others are incapacitated near them, they would then kind of turn into other necromorphs, such as the Brute. So who's to say that wasn't just like
also theoretically they could be the flesh that hates and emerge from the walls.
The Brute that you first run into on the bridge, and that is why you always light them up with fire whenever you see one.
Oh, it would smell awful, though.
Isaac's Might of Zeus stomp, they could turn back into the corruption or form new limbs from other tissue in their body, which was actually occasionally seen with the intestines forming rudimentary arms, or they could just turn into something way
corned beef snake!
Tormentor, or the
I love
Brute,
corned beef snake.
or basically anything terrible. So finally, we get to
for those of you that are confused, go watch my Dead Space Remake Dingus Edition Part 1 over on the Kaiju Kip channel, the quote-unquote main channel. I did a thing with corned beef snake. All hail corned beef snake, you right? Markers of tearing all the necros no longer effective. Cutting the strings focus. Right, no, if the markers destroyed like in Dead Space 2, the necromorphs that would have created are no longer in effect. They can't be reanimated. Convince people to make a trail for Brother Moons to follow. Yes. So effectively think of the Brother Moon like hive minds from Halo, like the key mind from Halo, like the planetary-sized one. And what happens is that the Brethren Moon, in order to get more Brethren Moons, kind of how they procreate, so to speak, is that they'll send a black marker down to a civilization. Black marker wiped out the dinosaurs. Humanity came up. Then it'll start at a certain point. Once a species has received enough has gone to enough of a cognitive standpoint, right? Intelligent enough, has certain technology, that kind of thing, right? It'll start sending out radiation. And then, humanity in this case, or even Tavalantis, like, oh, what's this radiation? And the marker's like, hey, I'll give you infinite energy, because it is a thing that just gives off energy. It gives it off. Energy crisis, right, solves the energy crisis. And then that's when you create red markers, and enough red markers come into play, and then all of a sudden they have that kill switch where, you have the events of Dead Space that happen, like at the beginning of Dead Space 3 when the giant red marker activates on the planet Isaacson with the head of unitology, and then just everything goes to hell. And then eventually there's enough biomass, enough people have been deceased, right? Enough people have been assimilated that it starts a convergence event, and that's when the marker is up in the sky and all the biomass just comes into it, coalesces into itself, and then it creates a new Brethren Moon. Have a good one, Kaiji. Yeah, have a good one. Being it was the moon. I don't think it was the moon. It was... No, because the moon showed up at the end. There was a red marker inside a facility at the beginning of 3. It was what I was talking about. Hunter completely atomized. Yeah, that's fair. First time, why don't we just obliterate the markers? That's the thing, is that you can obliterate the markers. In Dead Space 2, like, Isaac destroyed the marker. The issue with obliterating the marker is that you're effectively undergoing a, quote, to use D&D terms, or like RPG terms, right? You're undergoing a consistent psychic assault that people of lesser intelligence are going to turn into, you know, murderers and stuff, right? Where you have, what do you call it? There was a couple people in Dead Space, like the person sawing the corpse, right, in medical, when you first go through medical, right, you get people like that, or you get people like how there's an audio recording in Dead Space 2008, oh, you're the murderer from the colony, right, that kind of thing. The less intelligence you have, the more susceptible to succumbing to that psychic attack are, therefore you become, you know, a puppet of the marker, and eventually when you expire, you become necromorph, become corruption, etc. If you do have higher cognizance, you have more resistance to it, hence why Isaac has more resistance to it, hence why Mercer has more resistance to it. He's just doing this of his own volition, also because Unitology is his religion. Kyne, Nicole Brennan, right, they have resistances to it. Not that they're immune, like Ellie and Nicole, that's a bit of a different case, and we never really understand why. Like Strauss, right, very intelligent person in Dead Space 2, but because Strauss is, you know, eventually he does succumb to the marker's influence. So you can destroy a marker. That being said, it's very, very hard because you're undergoing a psychic assault. You're undergoing trauma consistently. Like, the whole time you're experiencing trauma, physical, mental, emotional, sometimes spiritual even. You see your dead relative just pop up in front of you, right? It's like, that's kind of fucked up, bro. And then, you have necromorphs assaulting you as well. So it's hard to destroy the marker, if that makes sense. And even then, the marker's made of, depending on how the marker is constructed, I don't know what the density of bismuth is. I don't know how reinforced it is, because we know that you have to laser etch these markers. We do see the marker building chamber in Dead Space 2, which I'm very familiar with because it fucked me over a couple times on my hardcore run. It's just one of those things that it's very hard to actually destroy a marker. So to answer the Fermi paradox, it's really neat. I do like Dead Space.
You know that one time that you went to the club and there was that one woman who latched onto your neck? And by the time you got out of there, it looked like Mike Tyson had like punched you.
I have no idea what this is. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That,
never had that happen.
Teeth. No, wait a minute. No, it's the same. The Slagathor will latch onto Isaac's neck, clubwoman style, and
that is
start
correct.
digging into it. It appears to get a strong enough hold and a deep enough hold into the tissue to wrench to the side, which severs Isaac's spine and connecting muscles.
Yeah, these teeth are
rough. This results in the head coming completely off the top of the shoulders, which results in
nothing sussy, YouTube.
It's worse. If the French are anything to go off of with the French guillotine stuff, you're alive.
Guillotine!
After that. So then the stalker hits you center mass with its blades on its hand because it's never heard of overkill before. Now, Isaac's counter to this is to shove it away like I should have done, and that's where the similarities end, because the next part involves showing the slasher some good old-fashioned hand-to-hand combat that humanity was raised
Taekwondo on
Basically,
his ass.
at this
Isaac
point,
is smart,
just go goblin mode on it, and make the species that controls the Brotherhood of Moons aware that humanity still has that dog in them.
Amazing.
Well, anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. Really enjoyed covering some more Dead Space, but I suppose we'll see what happens on the old
Is it not pronounced?
Front.
No, it's pronounced guillotine.
Not great odds. But anyhow, if you enjoyed, then leaving a like would be great. Subscribing is a great way.
As a kid, I thought, because Pokemon has the move guillotine, one-hit KO move, right? I thought it was guillotine for many years, but no, it's guillotine.
First, huge thank you to our astronaut Wesley A. Weaver Jr. Thanks, Prometheus.
Bingo card. You could, yeah.
Astrophysicist Des Panzer, as well as our scientists.
Monsters. Always go Goblin mode. That is the answer.
Tomy. And to the rest of my patrons, I thank you guys as well.
Welcome back.
A long way towards keeping everything running, especially with stuff like this, and is greatly appreciated. All right, so that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
Roanoke, you absolute legend. How are you not at 1 million subs yet? This is absolutely amazing content. I absolutely love this. Thank you, Roanoke. Continue to do the good work. Continue to start from the feet going up.